just makes sense. Because if you think of yourself, most of you are consistent how you access time. Some people it's their phone, right. Some it's a watch, we all tend to use a consistent way of knowing how long things are going. And in fact, I'd encourage people in the next 24 hours to notice how often they look at their watch, how often they're thinking, what time is it? How much longer have I got? Because I think we all do it subconsciously. We just like, oh, that's the time. Oh,
Right. Or how long have I been doing this? And then I've like gotten lost in it. And I'm like, oh, I needed to do 5 other things.
Exactly.
I have no time for that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's another, you were saying, that's why we created so many different new types, because we started out with our originals and then we have added more like smaller ones and bigger ones and shorter durations of time, because sometimes you use a personal time timer, sometimes you use a group time timer.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast.
Welcome, everybody. I highly recommend that you stay tuned to the end of this episode because we have got our biggest giveaway ever of my favorite tool to use in my classroom. So today I am super excited to have Jenny Davis, who comes from Time Timer in the USA, join us to help us understand how to help children understand the concept of time using my absolute favorite tool called Time Timers. So Jenny has worked for Time Timer for over 14 years. She's actually been out to Australia and met with my husband, Andrew, but she's also a mum, an educator, and she's going to bring us a wealth of ideas and strategies for working with our neurodiverse children, for helping them understand time, but also helping us manage time so we can manage their time as well. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. I'm so excited. What a privilege to get to talk with you today, Sue. I've followed you actually outside of even just that I work with Time Timer. I follow you along on your social media and just love the way that you work with families and teachers and children and just doing such good for people's quality of lives. It's very exciting to be here today. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, that is so sweet. Well, I'm super excited because I can tell you as a teacher, when I worked at an autism school, and the biggest change for me going from mainstream to working in an autism school was using time and the importance of helping children know when things were happening. And when Time Timers came out, the original ones, I remember, I think when we posted off originally to Time Timer, how long's Time Timer been going?
It's like over, we've already had our 25th year anniversary, so it's getting close to 30 years. Yeah.
I was going to say close to 20. I think for me in Australia, it was probably 25 years because that's when I was in a specialist school. And I remember we posted off to America to get them. And I think they took about 2 months to arrive.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I can still remember, like in the staff room, these new timers arrived and we're all so excited. And it was such a game changer, So, since then, I think I've had every different type of timer because they've changed over the years.
Yeah.
And so I always love, originally it was just one size and then all the different sizes. So some people won't even know what a time timer is, Jenny, so we better
you got to explain it. Right. Yeah. So like I said, Time Timer has been around for close to 30 years. And Jan Rogers, a mom, she's the inventor of Time Timer. And she had a child who really struggled with the concept of time. Transitions just were the hardest thing. So her daughter would she kept saying, how much longer do we have till we go? How much longer do I need to do this activity? Just the anticipation of time and understanding what time looked like was such a struggle. So she came up with this idea using paper plates to show her daughter visually how time elapses. And from there, she started coming up with patterns and creating them in her basement. And 30 years later, we're all over the world with 20 different models. And it's helped so many people understand the value of time and just helping people to just understand that time doesn't have to be a bad thing or a good thing. It's just something that they're doing in that moment. So time timer is a visual tool to help people see how much time they have left in an activity or until they move on, transition to a new event.
Absolutely. And people who don't know what they look like, the traditional one was red, and now they have a range of colors, and they move back on their own. And all of them now, I think you can turn the sound on or off. Originally, they all had sound, but that's been a great addition for some of my children who don't like sound.
Right.
And on the Time Timer Plus, which I use a lot in preschools and early childhood, you can turn the volume up and down, whether you're inside, outside, which I find really helpful. So they've got all these little things that make it sensory sensitive for my neurodiverse kids, but also that visual timer saves exactly what Jenny was saying, that constant questioning. But for my nonverbal children or children who can't speak, it's not the questioning, it's the behavior, because how else can they communicate how much longer? So I think what makes time timers so important is what the game changer for me when I was at the autism school, we'd have a visual schedule, but some children would rush through activities and then want to move on to the next thing, and they'd hardly spend any time on an activity. Or when they're on something they love, they wouldn't want to get off it. So that transitioning off. But for me, the big one is it takes the anxiety away from time. And I think you're the same, aren't you, Jenny? That anxiety is key.
Right. And they also created the time timer, like when you have a clock or a kitchen timer or something that you might purchase, it might click or tick or have noise with the movement. They also created the time timer to be a silent or very quiet. I mean, it should hardly have any noise to it, so that those children, adults who any kind of noise is stressful or just sensory sensitive to that really has been a lifesaver. So you can turn the alarm off, you can make it silent, and it's just visual. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, sorry, I just had a little flashback to a classroom where one of my ODD boys, I got a little oven timer for him, and the ticking. He was so stressed from the ticking. And you know those oven timers, the ones you turned around, so had like a mechanical sound as they were winding back. And he literally threw it and broke it. But look, I don't blame him. I mean, he was so worked up by that clicking sound, you know. So that was so important.
So that was really important to incorporate in that design for people.
And I'd forgotten about that. Until you said that, I'd forgotten one of the key things is the silence, because that's all I use now as time timers. I don't use anything else. So
Right.
So the other thing I think with the time timers that I find is a lot of people say, oh, time makes my child anxious. And but my experience is the traditional use of time is what makes the child anxious. Why do you think the time timer makes children less anxious?
So, for example, like I use it with my daughter a lot, and I use it with her when she's supposed to read 30 minutes every night. She's 10 years old, and that activity gives her anxiety. It's a little bit of a struggle. Maybe we didn't pick the perfect book for her to read. So between her and I, if I just say, I need you to sit down and read this book for 30 minutes, it's going to be a struggle between the two of us. She's emotional about the activity. I'm just frustrated wanting her to get started. But for some reason, I take out the time timer, I set it to 30 minutes, and her emotion about the amount of time is no longer good or bad. She looks at it and she can see, oh, the disc is getting smaller. I'm getting through the activity. I can get it. I can finish it. You know, it's like they can see visually that 30 minutes is not really that long, and it's going quickly, and I'm sitting here reading. Oh, so it becomes the timer is telling my daughter to read and not me. And so I'm not the bad guy. It's the timer that's the tool,
100%. That's what I say all the time, Jenny. I can't believe I was just listening to you going, oh my goodness, like that's what I try to explain to teachers, that so often, or parents, that particularly if the child's on a device, actually something they love, they'll often argue with you. My time's not up. No, that's, no. Actually, when the timer tells them the time's up, they're more likely to listen to it than listen to you, because they think you're negotiable. So
100%.
Something with reading, your daughter thought you were negotiable. No, didn't we start? Yeah. But using it consistently, I think, is the key. And what I have found for parents who worry their child's anxious about time, I say, well, use it on yourself first. Model using it on yourself. So, okay, we've got 10 minutes till we need to get out the door. What do I need to do? Go to the toilet, put the dog out. Like, okay, we've got 10 minutes until you need to get off your device. What do you need to do? Save the game. Actually model using time. Because for some of my parents, I think in the past, when they haven't had a timer, time has been anxious. But once you've got the timer, so it's a little mindset change for parents, I think. I think teachers are used to teaching to the clock, but I think it's important to talk out loud. Okay, we've got 10 minutes to go. What do I need to do? And actually, I find that that reduces everyone's anxiety. Yeah.
Right. Like say you're taking a test even, and you're in a classroom and the teacher, say you use no timer at all, and you're like, okay, 10 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go. That kid is going to potentially rush through, answer everything wrong, in even just like a mainstream classroom. But if you have a timer that shows 10 minutes, they can keep glancing up, pace themselves, calm themselves down. It's just, it is a really good way to take out that emotion and to understand, okay, 10 minutes is this amount of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a consistent use. I think that's what's really important. When you introduce a time timer, you just need to use it consistently. What I do in the classroom, I have a time timer monitor, because the kids love that being their job. So
that's
their
great.
job to put the timer on. So I don't even have to remember. And so the kid's like, oh, how long have we got? This is Larky, half an hour. How long have we got? 15 minutes. So I love making that a job for someone in the class. So they have that job for a week. And so they're excited. So then we're using it for everything, and all the kids are on task. But my point is this, and a little bit what you're saying. If you don't know how long you've got, if you have to go over to assembly or you have to get ready for school, if you have no concept of time, you have no concept, like Jan Rogers' daughter, you have no concept of time. No wonder you're anxious, because suddenly people are hurrying you up or telling you have to finish something. Imagine having no concept of time. I mean, we all look at our watches all the time. We all look at our phones all the time. Like, when don't we use time as a reference? I think as neurotypicals, we forget how often we access time, how often we look, think 5 more minutes, or, even today, Jenny and myself trying to get the timing right to America and Australia because of changing daylight savings was a bit stressful, right? Because we weren't on the same time frame. So imagine a child who's not on the same time frame as you, who doesn't have a concept of time, that 5 minutes can feel like 5 hours.
Right. Or it could drag on forever, and they feel like the activity is never going to end, and they just feel this anxiety growing and growing. And we take for granted understanding time. Like you said, I mean, I'm always checking to see, okay, I can do this and this. During the pandemic, it was really interesting. So we all went to Zooming in our meetings, and we're doing this all morning long. So I finished a meeting and I realized I've just sat here for 3 hours straight talking to people. And now I've got to go back and start on my emails and work on this. So what I would do is I would take my timer and I would set it for an hour, because I was feeling already worn out because of my meetings. And so I'd set it for an hour, and then I would feel like, okay, I can do this. I'm just going to push through. I'm going to take the anxiety out of what I need to do. And whatever I get done in an hour, that's what I'm getting done. Then I'll take my lunch break. But it's like how you said, use it with yourself. Try it as an adult. See how you can help you, how it can help you with transitions and getting through difficult tasks.
Well, Andrew and I use ours all the time. In fact, we had it on in his office yesterday because we had all this work we needed to do. And what shocks me is how often I have a big list and I look at it and I think, I'm not going to get through this. And I'll go, okay, I call it half an hour of power. I'm going to do half an hour of power with no interruptions. Or Andrew and I go, okay, we're going to do half an hour on fixing things on the website, because that's a never ending job. And it's amazing how much we can get done in focus half an hour. And I think this is the same for the kids. Like, I had a teacher come to one of my workshops, my Zoom ones when we were online. And anyway, she had this little boy who had really struggled to sit on the mat. I mean, a minute felt like 10 hours for him. So they started using the time timer. And so she said he was often not listening to her because he was focused on the timer at first.
Yeah, watching it.
Yeah, wanting to beat his record for how long he'd sat on the mat. But as she said, it didn't matter, because he actually then started to get that internal time clock. And I think this is what we have to realize. At first, they'll be looking at the clock a lot, watching it, because they're trying to understand time. But actually, over time, by using the visual, they get a better sense of time. And internal time clock is what I find. So once we've used it consistently, the child actually knows how long. And for me, I tend to, if the session's going for half an hour, put it on for 20 minutes to give the 10-minute warning, the 5-minute warning, because particularly for my ADHD kids, they often do need that last minute work crazy time.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's where you've got to accommodate the different learning styles for each child, but the visualness works for everyone, I think.
Right. And so using maybe a little bit of a pre-alert with those students is helpful, along with the time timer, for sure. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So the other thing we've touched on, but I'd love you to talk about like how you pair your visual schedule with a timer. I mean, I've sort of touched on it, but tell us how that looks.
Yeah. So we see, I mean, I use it with my children, but we see it being done in the classroom, and you kind of mentioned it too, that the idea of having, first I need to do this activity, then I need to do this, and finally I need to do this. If you tell a child or even an adult that you have to get these 3 things done you got 20 minutes to do it, they won't know how to pace themselves. But we can list the activities, put the disc on so they can visually see the time, and they can look at it, and it helps them to pace. Okay, the half of the disc is gone. I better be finishing up my steps. So it really helps with pairing the visual aspect of the time timer with a list of things that they need to get done during that time. A lot of times at bedtime or routines can be really challenging. So maybe it's like brushing your teeth or going to the bathroom, all those little things, we can put them on a schedule and then set the time. And it helps them to feel they get more focused on what they're doing, focused on the time. And then they're able to get through all the different tasks. We've heard lots of people using it for toilet training, that kind of thing too, because that's another stressful event you're trying to do. And it just helps to consistently work on those things and remind kids, okay, now I got to try to go to the bathroom.
Well, and I mean, one of my massive passions is getting children with autism out of nappies, and the time timer is an integral part of that. So, because of interoception, which is a child needing to know they need the toilet, most children with autism actually don't have that urgency until they're busting. So we do timing, not training. And that's a big mindset change for teachers and for children. So we'll put the time timer on for an hour. And then when the timer goes off, we go to the toilet rather than our body telling us or the adult telling us. And then so we develop toileting as a routine. And if parents get the time timer, it just makes it easy, because you just go after an hour, put the timer back on, then you can get distracted. And this is the thing for me with time timers. As a busy parent, or in the classroom particularly, when you are busy, time can disappear and you don't stay on time. And that actually can make my children more anxious, because then we start rushing. You know, if you're as a teacher, if you've got like a whole lot of things you need to get done in the last 10 minutes of the day, and suddenly the bell's gone, you're going to start rushing around and adding anxiety, or, you know, the lunch bell, whatever. I find timers keep me honest. They keep me on track. Yeah. So,
and I think you hit on a note too that we see is that maybe there's something a child's caregiver is being used during the day, and then they go home, and then it's like it can be chaos because then they don't have that same tool maybe. So having the tool at home to match whatever they're using the day. We've also seen that we have a time timer watch, and you can set it to repeat. So we've had a lot of children have good success where we set it to repeat every hour, and it will buzz them all day and the evening to remind them to go to the bathroom that way too. Like you said, that just repeated checking in the timing of trying to go every hour, so it gets their body on that pattern like that.
exactly.
And helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, a lot of my kids will push out to 2 hours, but once they've got that routine of going, because some of my parents listening are going, oh, every hour, that's hard. Yeah. But we just have to get in that routine so there's no accidents. And I think that's the thing, that if you go every hour, you're not going to have any accidents,
Right.
Yeah. So just getting the children in that. But yeah, absolutely. That is an awesome way to use timers. And I think the other awesome way is for children who love their devices. The way I look at it, if you love something, time disappears. When you're engrossed in something, and most children with autism spectrum have something they love. It might be their Lego or their device. We're watching their favorite shows, but time will just disappear. And they'll have no concept of time. And then they're going to argue with you that, no, they only just got on it, because it feels like that, doesn't it? So,
right. They get lost in that activity. Right.
Yeah. So I think what timers do is they move it from a feeling of time to an actual visual of time. So, which is what Jan wanted for her daughter.
Right. Right. To take away that stress of when are we going to move on to the next thing, or maybe you love that Lego time, but you are being told that you get this amount of time to do the tablet or the Legos. Then it helps to see, okay, I can enjoy my time while I'm doing it, but when it's done, it's done. We've also seen a lot of it really helps them with confidence too, and just being really independent, where it's good to be with kids. So it's not the parent or the teacher right on top of them, but I can be independent, because when I know that the timer's up, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go put my tray away or whatever I'm doing. But it starts to build in this, oh, I can do it. I can do an activity in the amount of time that I was being asked to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for many of our children, that's what we're aiming for. I always say when they're little, I'm going to put the timer on. But by the time they're in secondary, I want them to be able to put the timer on, watch it themselves, know how long they'll need. Because ultimately, if they need to catch a train or a bus or a bus in the future, everyone works to time. So it's a life skill. And I think it's probably, for me, the number one accommodation and adjustment that everyone needs on their individual education plan. How does this child access time? Because I go into schools that still have analog clocks, and the child, they can't even read it. No one uses analog clocks anymore. Your oven doesn't have an analog clock. Your microwave. I mean, I always say they're just a decoration. They're just like a thing in a house now. But the child might be able to read 10:30, but can they access it to know it's 15 minutes till they need to finish the activity? I don't even think half the neurotypical children know how to use that. So
even as an adult, I don't even use time like that anymore. To see an analog clock.
No, it's as an actual reference for knowing how long. You might use it for what time it is, but working out the maths around that is really hard. So for many of our children, I think that's the number one thing you need to think about. Are they going to have a little time timer, a big whole class time timer? Are you going to use a variety? Or even have a digital clock, because some of my children understand digital. But personally, obviously, I think the time timer is the game changer, just because of the portability and functionality. So you can, if you go to library, you can take it to library. I put it in the window when we go out to the playground to play, or if we're going to assembly. I think that consistency across all environments, and particularly if it's at home and school, just makes sense. Because if you think of yourself, most of you are consistent how you access time. Some people it's their phone, some it's a watch. We all tend to use a consistent way of knowing how long things are going. And in fact, I'd encourage people in the next 24 hours to notice how often they look at their watch, how often they're thinking, what time is it? How much longer have I got? Because I think we all do it subconsciously. We just like, oh, that's the time. Oh,
Right. Or how long have I been doing this? And then I've like gotten lost in it. And I'm like, oh, I needed to do 5 other things.
Exactly.
I have no time for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's another, you were saying, that's why we created so many different new types, because we started out with our originals, and then we have added more like smaller ones and bigger ones and shorter durations of time, because sometimes you use a personal time timer, sometimes you use a group time timer. So we're aware of the settings might change a little bit, but it's all the same concept, the visual aspect of understanding the amount of time you have to do in an activity, or the elapsed time.
Yeah.
It's not, like you said, it's not the telling of time.
No. So a couple of things on that. Number one, the first one was if you have a child with oppositional defiant disorder or pathological demand avoidance, timers, some people find timers, that's adding a demand to them. In my experience, if it's part of the routine, then you're not adding a demand. But what I have found, the small time timers are best because they have a plastic cover you can put over the front, so the children can't touch it or move it. So we set the time together, and I'll let the child choose how long they want, because ODD and PDA children need control. So how long do you want? And then we'll set it, and then we can put that plastic bit over the front so that it can't be moved. And I found that really helpful, because for some of my children who want to change the time, which is just their anxiety, it's just their
just want to get it done,
or they want longer,
more time
on something they love.
Right.
Either way, then we put the timer on and then we don't touch it. And then what I say is, well, if we didn't have enough time, next time let's write down, okay, well, next time we wanted 30 minutes. This time we had 15, but you wanted longer. So next time we come back, let's give a bit longer, so I'm still letting them have control, because some people would, I'll write down, okay, well, next time we come back to the computer, 15 minutes didn't feel long enough. Let's try 20, and
that's great.
I'm still giving them that option and that control. I'm not saying they can't have it. I'm saying next time. So now, just a couple of things before I forget. The other thing was, what I love about the original now has a card that goes on top of it.
Yeah, right.
Which is fantastic. But what I'm saying, and I don't know, Jenny, we haven't talked about this, the way I'm using the card is to tell the child what they're doing when they finish, not what they're doing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, not what they're doing now. They know what they're doing. Your daughter knows she's reading for half an hour. What's she doing when she finishes? So I'll put the card on there, what they're doing when they finish. So that transition visually shows them what's next. I don't know if that's how you designed it.
Yeah, I think they did design it mostly. They were putting like the activity of what you're on. But like you said, what you're doing. You've talked about what you're doing in this time amount. Then to have that visual cue of, once I get finished, because a lot of times a child gets finished and then, now what do I do?
Exactly.
Right. So that's a great way to do it.
So for my children who are have difficulty with transition, knowing what they're doing next is so important. And particularly for my children who are doing something they love. So if they're on their computer, why would they get off it to not know where they're going or what they're doing? So what I'd recommend is you have where they're going next. So whether they're going from computer to reading, or computer to maths, or computer to bed, or, whatever. But for my oppositional children, I would recommend they don't go from something they love to something they hate. So what I would have in between is like doing a job for me, or having a snack, or something very sort of
just neutral.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word. A neutral activity. And then we'll put the timer on for the neutral activity and tell them what they're doing next after that. And I found that much more powerful use of the timer, so we don't get the arguments with the oppositional children. So I'm doing 20 minutes on my device, then I'm having my barbecue shapes, And then once they're eating the barbecue shapes, I'll say, next, we're doing what? So just if anyone listening has that challenge, I would try that out, that you go to, I'm going to use your word, neutral activity.
Neutral.
Yeah.
That's a great way. I hadn't really thought as much about thinking about the next activity using the cue. So what we have done with the original timers is we put a little slot in the top of it. And then it comes included with a little white dry erase board card. So you could draw a picture, you could write what the activity is, you could tape something onto it, whatever it is. But that's a great way to transition, another helping way of moving through your day and your time. And yeah, just being aware that some things do feel good and bad to people in those activities like that. So
100%.
It really helps with that transition.
Yeah. So, Jenny, I'm sure people have been waiting for getting near the end of this to hear what they're going to win. And we've actually got 30 of those new medium timers. Well, they're now called medium. They were called large for so long. So I'm going to call them the original size.
Yeah. They're
And they also have magnets on them now too, which is awesome.
Yeah, all of our originals come with magnets on the back, so you can hang them on your dry erase board, or you can hang it on a board on your refrigerator. They do have a kick-out stand, so you can have them standing, and they have a nice clear plastic lens, like you said, so fingers aren't touching the disc, and with a big knob to be able to set it. And now we've introduced lots of new colors too. It's super fun.
Which is also one of our prizes people can win, which I'm super excited about, the Learning Centre classroom sets, which you can either have the orange, green, and purple, which are the secondary colours, or the red, yellow, and blue. And in fact, I'm in a school next week. I'm going to take them with me. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. They look so fun.
I know. So the way it is, they're exactly those beautiful medium or the original size.
Yeah.
And there's 3 colors in a set. So you can have them on your learning tables for each group. This is so cool.
It's so fun. And you can just, the ceiling is your oyster. Like just go with it and put them in centers, have the purple group, have all sorts of different activities going. And each timer's disc is the color of that timer too. So it's really fun to see and be able to use them around the room, and to differentiate too between the activities using the color that way too. We're so excited for this giveaway.
I am so excited for people to have these, like both the original and the new learning centers. I mean, honestly, I can see like preschools and primary, because so many schools now use centers as learning. And I know a lot of schools I go into, they'll have a whole lot of groups set up. So, because you can have it on the mat. If you're doing a maths activity on the mat, you've got the purple group there on the mat. And because a lot of classrooms now do more sort of the hot desk. So everyone can have their timer. And again, make a child the monitor in that group, And
that's a great one.
It's giving them a responsibility. And for some of my neurodiverse children, they love a job. So make them the job, and that's helping them learn number. And so I'm super, super excited that we're going to do this giveaway. So I'm going to tell people that we're going to make it really easy. There's 4 different ways to win, Jenny.
Okay.
Because it depends how people learn best. So I've written them down so I don't forget. So what I'd actually recommend is people go to this podcast episode on the website. It will explain and show you how to enter all the ways. But one way is just leave a review for the podcast and then take a screenshot and send it to my support at suelarkey.com.au, or share this episode with a friend. Share it. So
pass it around.
Take a screenshot. So share it with a friend. Take a screenshot that you've shared it and send it to my team at the support. Or we're going to have on this podcast episode a really easy way to enter to answer a simple question, which might be, what is Sue's favorite way to keep track of time? And you just have to answer that question and send us your email address and enter to win. So that's if you're not comfortable doing reviews or sharing, you can just answer an easy question and you'll go in. You can still go in it to win. And I've also got a free webinar coming up. I think it's on the 10th of May, and I'm going to be giving them away then. So join me for the webinar, and there'll be some giveaways at that. So there's 4 easy ways to win, Jenny, because you've.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so excited for somebody to have them and enjoy them and use them.
Yeah. And I think there's I think I worked out over $2,000 of giveaways, which is our biggest giveaway, Annie. Thank you for your generosity.
Yeah.
Jenny's already sent me the timers. I've got them here ready, waiting for me to send out to people. So the big thing is, though, make sure you enter by the 15th of May. We need a cutoff. So that gives them pretty much 2 weeks from when this episode comes out to actually have a listen, and win. And I would love, if you're a winner, to send us a photo of using the timers, particularly the new Learning Centre ones, so people can see how the different coloured ones work. But I'll be sure to post some photos on the blog so people know what we're talking about. Now, there was one other thing I do. A question I get all the time, and I don't want to forget to ask. People ask me, why does the time timer go the opposite way to a clock? I get asked that all the time.
Right. Okay. So it goes back to, it's the basics of it. It's the function of the time timer. So the function of the time timer is not to teach a child how to tell time. The function of the time timer is to help somebody see the passing of time. So when we reverse the numbers and the disc diminishes, it shows how the time is getting smaller. So if we put our numbers, everyone asks, probably once a week I get asked, especially teachers, they really, really feel like it's wrong. It's not teaching the time, but we're not telling you it's 10:30. We're telling you that you have 30 more minutes to do an activity, and this is how it diminishes.
This is so good. So many people ask me, and I go, I don't know, it just works. I promise you. I just use it for timing and it works.
Right.
I now have an answer for people. This makes so much sense. I can't believe I haven't asked you that before, Jenny. Well, not that we've ever spoken, but I should have emailed and asked you, because I get asked every workshop.
Oh, it's our top question for sure.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm glad Australian teachers ask the same question.
Yeah, we all think the same way. We all think that our brain's just saying, oh, it's a clock, it should look this way. That's not what it's helping you do. So
I love it. It's not a clock. It's a timer that visually shows us. That's awesome. Well, Jenny, you have not only been generous with your time to come on and share with us about time timers, but I can't thank you enough how excited I am to have so many timers to give away, because I know everyone who wins one of these, it will change their life. From that, I was back in my classroom, my staff room, when we were talking about those first timers arriving, and we used to have to stick it with blue tack before Velcro. Right. Stick with blue tack the visuals on them, and now you can put those things on, and all the changes that Time Timer have made is just amazing. All the adaptations and improvements over the years.
Yeah, and that's been my favorite part over all these years, is just hearing from people how this changed my life. This helped me work with my child. This helped me work with that student I didn't understand. This helped me in my own adult life. Like hearing how something like, that's why I love working at Time Timer, because we're actually helping to change people's lives and to make things and activities and transitions so easy and stress-free. And it's just great to hear. Like you said, share your photos. I can't wait to see how people use things. Yeah.
Look, Jenny, I really get it. I mean, for me, Time Timers were such a game changer. Just for having a product, I'm sure, working with a product that just actually every day you hear how it helps people and change people's lives. I mean, I know we get people who get them from us who have head injuries, and people who use them for dementia. Like, it's not just autism. Right? There's so many ways Time Timers. I know today we're focused on the use in autism and neurodiversity, but we have so many different customers approach us who are like, oh, would this help with this situation? And I say absolutely. Anyone who needs the concept of time and to manage, and we all do, this is visual and showing's incredible. So, yeah. I love it. Well, thank you again. We have been planning this for a while, and I'm super excited to do our biggest giveaway and sharing a wonderful tool that will make a massive difference to to adults and children. It's amazing.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me today. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
You're too kind. Thanks, Jenny.
I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.